Warning, the following video contains spoilers for Star Trek Picard. Now, ahead, warp factor 8. Engage! Greetings, primitive-brained creatures of the planet Earth. I am Q. I have decided, in my wisdom, to share my thoughts on the first episode of Jean-Luc's new little show, Star Trek Picard. Don't worry, I will use small words in your very primitive language so you have a chance to comprehend what I'm saying. So it was very interesting to see Picard's little dream with Data. I usually try to stay out of his dreams, especially once I caught a glimpse of him dreaming about Beverly and Vash at the same time. Such primal urges for one who considers himself so cultured. It was interesting, though, to see the old Enterprise D. So seeing that ship again and the dream sequence, I must say, Jean-Luc is a bit disturbed. But I'm not sure which is more disturbing, his dreams or seeing him on a planet. So it is interesting, though, to see he's got some new pointy-eared friends. But they're not the focus. This new young woman, she was a rather compelling character. And yes, obviously her showing up hunted gave some Logan vibes. Even the fight scenes made us think of X-23, especially that weird jump. It almost looked like she was flying at one point. I was waiting for the claws. But I must admit her explosive ending made such parallels go away. Now, some may find an organic being with a positronic brain, the very idea could be very odd. Trust me, though, there are more strange things in the universe than your puny minds can possibly conceive, and in some cases, perceive. Though it does seem an odd creation, considering the mistrust and hate that so many in the Federation have for synthetics. So people in the Federation have scaled back their policy of toleration when it comes to synthetic beings. I must say, the more you humans think you change, the more you actually stay the same. Still, putting a positronic brain in a purely organic form seems a little odd. Though, obviously, there were some physical enhancements made, as we could see by the way she was fighting, but it still wouldn't be as durable as a body like Data's. But for whatever reason, they decided to make these positronic organisms, and apparently they're always made in identical pairs. Now, I must say it would have been nice to have a reason for this, like some technobabble, like in order to make sure that they're replicated properly, there are two made at once to check for errors, and if one fails, both fail. If one survives, both survive. You know, the normal technobabble stuff. But this duplication, for whatever reason it's there, is essential so that Jean-Luc can try to save the sister of the one he failed. How nice. So overall, seeing a retired Jean-Luc was a joy, but at the same time, a bit sad. He was always at his best among the stars. No fun to visit Jean-Luc at his chalet. Q, get out of my vineyard. Now, that little interview was an interesting device to give us some backstory without making it too obvious. Though the coincidence of him doing the interview just as Dawes needed to figure out who he was a bit strange, a bit contrived. Though, because of her weird knowing of him, might she have not needed that clue? However, I have to say, the episode was called Remembrance for a reason. Because you really needed to remember that you really liked Jean-Luc's old show. So you'll probably like this one. On a side note, I'm really glad they fixed Data's hair. It was very disturbing in those trailers, almost as bad as Sonic. So this was a good start to the series. Picard, I have to say, was pretty sharp to figure out she was a positronic girl. I hope we find out a little more about those who destroyed her, and I have a feeling we will. So now, it was the anniversary of the Romulan supernova. I wonder if these attackers chose that date deliberately, like as a symbolic gesture. Because that's the only reason I could see why the attack would happen at the same time as Jean-Luc's little broadcast. So, my primitive brain friends, I have to say the episode was good, despite some awkward dialogue. Now, Jean-Luc, being so sharp and figuring out so quickly that the girl was positronic, he might have been guided by the only being more powerful than the Q, the plot. Oh, and if you're wondering how Jean-Luc survived that explosion, I mean, it did throw him back with incredible force, and he's not as spry as he used to be. I mean, look at that. Look at it again. You'd think he'd be dead. And he was just banged up a little and woke up at home, which is very odd. It's almost like someone was watching over him and tweaked the laws of physics just a bit to make sure that he wasn't harmed. And maybe even tripped his emergency transporter recall switch so he would just appear back home. That seems quite incredible. But who could possibly do that? Now, I am looking forward to the next episode of Star Trek Picard, despite some crying on the internet about how Picard is horrible and doomed to failure. I personally think Jean-Luc's return has been very good so far. Now, they were a little light on the backstory, but I'm sure it will be filled in as we go along. Now, even though the continuum has curtailed my ability to see the future, I do have some predictions. Now, over the course of the season, Jean-Luc is going to discover the reason why the synthetics attacked Mars. He'll discover the entire conspiracy behind it, and that they weren't at fault. The synthetics were actually victims. Some anti-Romulan group probably arranged it. Jean-Luc will expose the truth, bring the evildoers to justice, and become a beacon of hope for a Federation that's lost its way. This is now on record, so we'll see if I'm right. In the meantime, if you'd like to entertain your rather simple minds with some fun videos, there are some over here. If you want more of the wisdom of Q, subscribe down there and hit that notification bell. Do that whole follow thing on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And remember, the trial never ends.